Physicians change jobs and even entire careers an average of 3 to 7 times over the course of their professional lives. Often, we're expected to hit the ground running with little time to learn the rules, logistics, and dynamics of a new environment. And when we venture beyond traditional roles into uncharted territory, these transitions can feel even more abrupt and challenging. My guest today, Dr. Dennis Mihaly, has been through more career transitions than most, from clinical medicine to founding healthcare organizations, from working with IBM on health systems innovation to leading telehealth strategy at the national level. He has navigated major shifts across both clinical and corporate landscapes. There are times in our lives that change the way we see the world. Navigating these challenges can take insight, trusted confidants, or even a coach. Let's explore those moments. In this companion podcast to RX for Success, we will discover ways to learn and write our own success stories together. I'm Dr. Dael Waxman, a physician coach with MD Coaches, and this is Life-Changing Moments. Dr. Mihaly's professional path is well detailed in our companion podcast, RX for Success, episode 199. I highly recommend a listen. In this conversation, we don't just explore the what of his career path. We dig into the how he approached each transition, what internal shifts were required, and what wisdom he's gained along the way. Whether you're anticipating a transition or already navigating one, I think you'll find plenty of insight in our discussion. So Dennis Mihaly, welcome to Life-Changing Moments. Good to have you.
Great to be here.
Well, many of our listeners have listened to the RX for Success recording that you had with my colleague Randy Cook, but many have not. And given that our theme today is the issues that go along with transitions, and what triggered me when I listened to Randy's recording of you was how many transitions you've had in your professional life. A lot of them in medicine, but some of them not in medicine. And so I'd be curious, I'll be asking some questions about that, but what I'd like to begin with is, can you kind of take us through your history of your professional life?
Sure. I went to school, undergraduate, graduate, as an aerospace engineer. I got out when the aerospace engineering was in a slump in the 70s, early 70s. I drove a taxi cab and then worked for the office of the mayor, city of New York, which was good because I had an engineering background. And one of my several projects were the Health and Hospitals Corporation and did a lot saving them money. I then transitioned to IBM. My wife was working at IBM and she asked me to come over, and I thought it was stuffy, but I went to one of their after work parties and it wasn't stuffy. And the next thing you know, I'm working for IBM, and I did that for 8 years, actually be one of the people that launched IBM Global Services, and then told my boss I was leaving to go to med school, which was shocking to him. I went to med school. I got out. I went initially into residency in orthopedics. I left and went into emergency medicine. Then I built not one, but 2 health plans. And then I left and went to work for a consulting firm. Finally went back to IBM. In the middle of residency, I went to IBM Watson to do biomedical research. Then came back to IBM for the third tour of duty. Started my own consulting company back in 2022, 2023, which has been around ever since. Sometimes I took time out. I went to work for a Berkshire Hathaway company, Wellfleet, third largest college insurance, health insurance company. Then thought I was going to take a break, left them to go back to my company. That lasted a weekend. And I went to a very large, today very large, more than 100,000 lives, multi-state in-home practice, which was kind of a little bit ahead of its time. Left there. And then came back to my company where I reside now. I do a lot of work for different companies, and I partner with a lot of companies.
quite a whirlwind tour with there's some similar themes throughout it. I wonder if we can go back for a moment. I know that there's a lot of folks who are actually in medicine, in clinical medicine, and are considering doing something different and outside of medicine. You did that kind of in reverse from the way some people are thinking right now. I was wondering if you could take us back to that moment that you decided to leave IBM, which sounded like it was a great opportunity for you, but then to move into medicine in medical school somewhat later than a lot of people do. What was that about?
First of all, IBM had a lot to do with that. IBM taught me a lot about how to understand and strategize. I was on the New York City subway, and for probably the 100th time, I told my business partner, who we're still friends, we're less than an hour away from each other, in 1980, 81, actually not 1979, I think I'm going to go to I should go to med school. And he said, literally, I'm going to punch your heart out if you say that one more time. Just go to med school. So I walked into the dean at NYU in a three-piece suit and sat down to talk about, how to get to med school. And after about 15 minutes, he realized I didn't go to NYU. I had just such presence, courtesy of IBM, that I whisked through his executive assistant and he spoke to me. And then I went up to Columbia, spent 2 years there doing pre-med, transitioned down to Florida, Tampa, where one of my jobs was to help launch the IBM Global Services, which we did February 10th, 1982. And later that year, I got accepted to the University of Miami and I left. And that was a tough time. They gave a talk the first day of med school about life stressors, life changes. And they said 1 or 2 or 3 are good. They give you a little pep. And there were 20 of them. And I stood up and I raised my hand and I said, what if I have 17 of those life stressors?
Right.
I had moved, I had sold a house, I had bought a house, I had left the job. I mean, there was very little other than being sick. There was nothing. And so there was a lot of pressure. I was 35 and there were some very young kids who were very, very smart. And I was trying to just keep up with them.
Yeah. So, given how challenging that was, and it really, I hear that IBM in many ways was responsible for your success in getting to medical school. It's such a different environment from the outsider. What was it that influenced you? You said your business partner said you kept saying, I'm going to go to med school. I'm going to go to med school. What was behind that?
When you worked for IBM, it was a prestigious job. It was sometimes more prestigious than being a lawyer or a doctor at that time. This was the 70s when IBM was the rage. And you were going to have a good life. You were going to make money. You were going to have stock. You were going to have, a retirement plan, a pension. But other than really taking care of myself and my family, what was I doing? And so I decided I wanted to do something where I woke up every morning and I knew I was doing something more meaningful than just making money. Probably had I understood the opportunity for technology in medicine, maybe I would have had a different thought, but I didn't. And I just wanted to get up and know that I was going to do something that day for someone else.
We'll get back to our interview in just a moment, but first, I'd like to share a message from Navigate. After spending years in the financial sector, Navigate has met lots of clients with all kinds of student loan issues. They were confused, they were overwhelmed by the doublespeak and the overly complex forms, and especially the deliberately misleading statements from loan servicer representatives. Navigate recognized the chaos in the student loan industry and immediately brought clarity and real solutions. If you'd like to flip the script on student debt, visit www.flipthescript.loan/MD-coaches to schedule a call with Navigate. They'll tailor a plan specifically for your unique situation and work with you until the loan is paid off. What do you have to lose besides the stress of student loan debt?
Hi, I'm Rhonda Crow, founder and CEO for MD Coaches. Here on RX for Success, we interview a lot of great medical professionals on how they grew their careers, how they overcame challenges, and how they handle day-to-day work. I really hope you're getting a lot of great information. But if you're looking for an answer to a specific problem, management or administration challenge, or if you're feeling just a bit burnt out, like maybe you chose the wrong career, well, then there's a faster way to get the help you need. No, it's not counseling, it's coaching. RX for Success is produced by MD Coaches, a team of physicians who have been where you are. I know you're used to going it alone, but you don't have to. Get the support you need today. Visit us at mymdcoaches.com to schedule your complimentary consultation. Again, that's mymdcoaches.com, because you're not in this alone.
We'll get back to our conversation in just a moment, but first, I want to mention a sponsor who has been with us almost since our beginning. Physician Outlook is a splendid publication created for physicians by physicians. Originally a print and online magazine, it's now a dynamic digital-only platform using storytelling, humor, and community building to help physicians and surgeons reconnect with the art of medicine. Physician Outlook celebrates the entire healthcare team, including nurses, nurse practitioners, and PAs who value physician-led care. As artificial intelligence and corporate overreach threatens the human connection, Physician Outlook remains committed to the sacred physician-patient relationship. Beyond storytelling, Physician Outlook takes action on causes that matter. So join the movement, connect, laugh, be inspired. Visit physicianoutlook.com today. And now let's get back to our interview.
During that time, you mentioned that you had a lot of those major stressors with all the different life changes that you had. How did you navigate through those?
The first 6 months were really tough. What was really kind is my boss, when I left IBM, gave me a 2-year leave of absence so that if something happened and I crashed at med school, I could come back. And that was like a safety net. Mr. Phillips did a really nice job of that. Really grateful. Probably should track him down and thank him. But those first 6 months are the toughest because it is totally different. At IBM, everything was organized. You were trained for months to do something. You were given the syllabus. You were told what to do. Med school was not as organized as you might think. And sometimes you were told, go figure out how to put in a Foley catheter and come back here and do it. So it was tough. It was harder because I had 2 children, and then a third one was born while I was in med school. I left before they got up and came home after they got back. I used to leave little bags of M&Ms, so they knew I had been home. But it was really hard, and I think looking back, it took 6 months to a year to get my footing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Anything that was particularly helpful for you during that time to help you get your footing?
I had some great friends, made some great friends, still are friends. If I'm ever out in LA, I see Dr. Joseph Pasenya or Dr. Johan Seiderhout, and Johan was my anatomy partner. So there were people who, if I didn't realize, it wasn't obvious what to do, they would tell me. And once I knew what to do, I was good at doing it. But so I was lucky. I was very lucky that I was accepted. I was 35. We had somebody who was 19. And most people were, 21 to 25. So to be accepted was probably critical for me.
Yeah. So just that the pure acceptance was a significant piece for you. So let's move ahead a little bit. So you're in graduate medical school. I know you did a residency. You started a residency, correct? Yeah. And there were several positions that you had within medicine that also intersected with the business world. Did you find that any challenges in transitioning in those particular cases from medicine into business, or how did that go for you?
For me, it was made easy. I was lucky. One of my mentors, Dr. Philip Spiegel, who was chair of orthopedics at USF, had joined with two other people to create a Medicaid health plan. I was working in the ER at the time. I liked my work. I worked 4 days on, 4 days off. So I had a balanced, very balanced life with family. And they decided to start a Medicaid HMO and asked me if I would join because they knew I had a great business background. Courtesy of IBM and the Office of the Mayor, City of New York. And I said, you guys aren't going to make any money. And then somebody came in to the ER, a mother with a little baby, and she'd been there 3 weeks before. And the staff was kind of telling me how she shouldn't be coming to the ER. But I could see the bond. So I asked her, I said, I can see how close you and your baby are. What happened? And she broke down in tears. She had spent 3 weeks trying to find an office that would see her son. So that next day I called up Dr. Spiegel and said, we're not making any money, but I'm in, because he had told me that every one of our members would have a primary care doctor and 13 specialists within each county. And that was, to me, magnificent. So that's what started it.
Yeah. So you moved into that role. That's like a chief medical officer role. And what was that like?
Well, I was splitting time. In the beginning, I was working in the ER. So for about a year, I worked in the ER 4 days. And then at nights and my 4 days off, I filled out the application and got it approved by the state and won the contract for Medicaid. So it was 1 foot in each of them. And then when we started, I was still working part-time, half and half. I realized that I wasn't getting along well with the CEO. And I sat down for lunch and I said, would it be better if I left? I seem to be nipping at your heels and, we don't need that. I want the company to be successful. So I left on good terms. I still had equity and started my own. And there I was working. I decided to work 4 days a week in the ER. So now I was mostly in the business side and a little bit in the medical side. And eventually that really didn't work. So I really had to run that plan. We grew it to $30 million in 3 years and then eventually sold it. But by that point, I was pretty much had made the transition, although at times I would move back to the either medical director or chief medical officer role. And in that role, you always have some direct patient care and more oversight of physicians and nurse practitioners. I never get away from medicine. I get a call every week. I get at least 1 or 2 calls, someone who needs something. So you never really leave medicine. It's just maybe you're 90% on the business or administrative side.
And then the other part, as I'm listening to your story, is business never left you when you entered medicine either. So it sounds to me like it has been fairly fluid for you to move between these two sort of worlds that for many of us are very, very disparate.
Yeah. And one of the things that I've said to a lot of people who want to move, they'll ask me, how do I get out? And sometimes the easiest way is not to totally leave medicine. It might be to go work for a health plan. It might be to go work for a large practice. And I tell them, spend a year volunteering 1 day a month, on a committee. See what you think of it. See what you like it, and then spend another year working for doing some projects and stuff. And eventually you'll figure it out. Do I like it? Do I not like it?
Mm-hmm.
And then when you move, I've told everyone, work at least 1 day a week in a clinic. And most places will allow you to do that because they understand the tremendous benefit of you staying in touch with patients and you having credibility with your colleagues. So I really would tell anybody who says I'm totally leaving medicine, I'd ask him, do you think you're kidding yourself?
Yeah, and I wonder if for you, there's that sense that you talked about earlier about when you transitioned from IBM to medical school, doing something that was more meaningful.
Yeah.
And I wonder if that's where that's coming from, what you just said.
I think it is. And if you look at the jobs that doctors have, it's either going to be with some kind of an entity, a practice, an IPA, an ACO, a health plan to be a medical director, look at quality, look at utilization management, or look at patient safety and risk management. Those are all things that we can do with proper training, but they're still somehow connected to medicine. Even if you go to a pharmacy and you do research, or medical devices and you do research, or you're sitting in the operating room helping the surgeons use an implant, the ones who truly leave are the ones that maybe go to Wall Street. Even then, what kind of companies do you think they're being asked to review?
Sure. Yeah.
Healthcare companies. And sometimes, more often than you think, they get excited about a new healthcare company. And the next thing you know, they're the medical director at this fantastic healthcare company.
Yeah. Back to your comment, though, about sort of remaining clinical, even if you leave, even if you do predominantly business kind of work, it seems to me like the roots of that are the roots for many of us. There's some meaning derived from having that one-on-one interaction, as well as it informs perhaps that the other work that you're doing.
It is important. And people ask me, what's the nicest thing, when you're in the ER or in a clinic, when you're working in medicine? I said, the greatest thing is when a patient says, thank you. And to me, that's, you don't ever get away from that. You don't ever get away from that. And even if you tried, family members, fellow employees, they know you're a doctor. They're going to ask you for advice and counsel. Help me navigate the healthcare system.
Yeah. So I want to kind of bring us back to some of the transitions that you made. Were there any skills or perspectives that you developed from some of the earlier roles that you had that helped you succeed in later transitions?
Well, clearly my engineering background helped me when I was at Watson doing that biomedical research. And it does help because a lot of medicine is analytics. So it helps there. I would say, though, the biggest help was IBM. When you have an idea, you have to present it. You have to gain consensus. You have to gain collaboration. And so those IBM sales skills are really important. One of the jobs I had that I held for 10 years, it was all about speaking with doctors and teaching them about proper documentation and coding. And most of the people who came in were auditors and coders who talked at them and judged them. And I talked with them and I didn't judge them. And I told them that none of us went to med school to learn how to fill out coding. And then here's why we're doing it. And interestingly, even though I worked for the health plan, I got invited back to come in and check on them. And think about that. A practice, a physician asking the health plan's doctor to come back and make sure he's doing it right or she's doing it right. So those skills about, again, I would say not talking at someone, not judging them, trying to find a common ground, those are IBM skills.
In the RX for Success podcast with Randy, you mentioned some of those skills that you got from IBM that were interpersonal skills and how much more valuable those were to you in lots of your success than some of the other things that you developed. I remember you saying in that podcast, things really came alive for you when you were a third-year medical student because you're now interacting with people, not with textbooks and exams. And because you already had you had that set of skills. It was easy. Yeah. You said, I could transition into the interpersonal stuff very easily.
So, it's really funny. I remember walking into a room and a mother was there with a child and she was very nervous, as any mother would be with a sick child. And I closed the door. And I sat down. I didn't stand up looking down. I sat down. Again, IBM training. And I said, it's busy out there. You don't mind if we just take our time? And I said to her, you did your job. You got your baby here. Now let me do mine. Today we get the greatest healthcare in America. She gave a phenomenal history. So good that USF, where I have an appointment, used to send residents and medical students up to understand what I did. How did I get people to relax? How did I get people to give me such a good history? How did I get people engaged? And I remember one of them asking me one time, said, where did you learn this? Like, they didn't teach this in med school. And I said, I learned it at IBM. And the young man said, I didn't know IBM had a med school.
So, these days, a lot of those skills are kind of lumped in this category of emotional intelligence. And I don't know if people who have those skills, we know from the research, is more important than IQ, the EQ or emotional intelligence quotient. It sounds like IBM was really skilled and early in that game before there even was such a thing that labeled as emotional intelligence.
Yeah. I mean, one of the things that IBM taught me over and over, or reminded me, people buy from people they like. And it wasn't just to buy. If you like somebody, you're not going to let them make a bad decision, even if it means that you're not going to sell something that they don't need or won't deliver what they, the outcome for which they hoped. So you have to have some relationship. People say, well, you can't get too emotionally involved with your patient. They're coming in and they're scared. They may not remember everything they meant to tell you. They don't ask every question. You're the one who should be calm and relaxed, and you're the one who has to make sure. And I told more than one doc, it's not your job to just tell them the right thing to do. It's your job to help them do the right thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I want to go back to this concept of our theme for the day, which is transitions and change. Many people struggle with knowing when to make a change. What signs should someone look for to know that they're ready for a transition?
Yeah. My brother taught me one thing. He said, never leave, if you're unhappy. Make sure you're happy. You're not just leaving because you don't like your boss. But let's assume that, you like your job and you like the company, but it's just not giving you everything you want. It's not as fulfilling. It's not as challenging. It's not as exciting. It's not a bad place, but it's not as exciting. And that's when you think about a change. But the one important thing, and when I did this right, I made good decisions. When I did this poorly, I made bad. There's a lot of people around you who can help you with that decision. They might not be a doctor, or they might not be working for a health plan or an ancillary healthcare company, but they'll sit down with you and they'll listen to you and they'll help you find your way. So I would tell people, first, if it's not fulfilling, start considering, but leverage the people that care about you. They have great insight, and it might come from the last person you would think. And they just say something, and suddenly it's very clear what you want to do and where your path is.
I love what you said. To talk with people who care about you is different than going to like an advisor or a counselor. But the people, I think it was another person I had on the show who said that they consult with their committee. And the committee is these, and they're not necessarily, they don't meet as a committee, obviously, but it's a committee of their people who care about them. I love that idea. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember having left New York residency. I was coming back down to Florida. I was living in Tampa, and I was working in the ER, and my mentor, Philip Spiegel, we're having dinner, and I was trying to figure out what to do. And he said, you're never going to be a great doctor. And he didn't mean you weren't going to be great as a doctor, but you're never going to win the Nobel Prize. You're never going to be chairman of a department. That's not who you are. But you have the greatest business background. Well, the rest of us get an MBA. We have no idea. I got my MBA too, but we don't have that 10, 12 years of experience and, making those decisions and transitioning. He said, you're going to be great for healthcare on the business side, and that's where you belong. And that started me thinking. And then he was the one who came to me and said, we're going to build a Medicaid HMO. And I blew him off until that incident in the ER.
Yeah. Yeah. Nice. So those are some of the signals that people pay attention to and who to go to for some guidance or just to put some things out there. What's your observation, either in yourself and or others, about what are some common mistakes that people make when navigating career transitions?
I think sometimes they think it has to be an abrupt change. I think I have to leave job A and I have to go to job B. And I don't think that's always true. It's like saying two things are mutually exclusive. They may not be. You're thinking about going into academics. Well, become a part-time, professor, teach a course, hang around a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You still have your job, figure it out. Maybe the chair gives you a project and it helps you decide, one way or the other. When you're making that transition, prepare. Go to a company or go to a person and say, what is it really like? What do I need? How prepared do I have to be? You can be very smart. You're a doctor. You may impress people because you carry yourself well, but what skills do you really need? The other thing is, if you think it's the right decision now, is there any reason why you can't think about this for 90 days? Is it an opportunity that's now, which happens, by the way? It's now.
Yeah.
But if it's not one of those, if you still love the idea 90 days from now, well, then, go for it. But I do think that people sometimes don't do the investigative work. They don't research it as much. A good friend of mine who's at Auburn, chief medical officer at Auburn, was looking at a job, and he went and spent the day with everybody, not just the people interviewing him. He said he interviewed for an hour. He said, but I want to go out on the floor. I want to talk to everybody. I want to meet everybody. I want to find out what this place is like. And doing that for a day or two, using your PTO, it can be very eye-opening.
Mm-hmm. Good investment, it sounds like.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So one of the things I'm hearing you say is not to take on opportunities as all or nothing, that I either, I leave and then I go somewhere else, but actually make some inroads into the possibilities, more exploration, and actually do some experiential work in that area as well. Yeah.
Absolutely.
If you could go back and give yourself one piece of advice before making some of the transitions that you made, what would it be?
It would be to talk it over with my wife, my brother, my sister, my family, my friends, figure out, really, really talk it over. I don't think the decisions would have changed, but the path might have changed or the preparation might have changed. When I look at every decision that I regret, and I made some where I turned down things that I should have accepted, I did it without talking to the people that cared about me.
Dennis Mihaly, I really appreciate your taking the time to share some of your pearls from your long experience. You have, and I encourage people to listen to the RX for Success podcast that I keep referring to, because you have made a significant contribution to healthcare and to literally hundreds of thousands of patients as a result of your work in leading healthcare organizations, as well as your direct one-on-one care as well. And I really appreciate your taking the time today to influence even more people. So thank you once again for all you've done through your whole career, and also even now and in the days, weeks, and months and years ahead. So thank you.
Yeah. Thanks for having me. Thanks for letting me share. I hope that your listeners get some value out of this.
Thank you for tuning in to Life Changing Moments. If you enjoyed this episode, please be sure to rate us 5 stars and leave a review. Doing so helps our podcast reach more listeners. Have something to share? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Visit the MD Coaches community on Facebook groups. This dynamic virtual space is a place to continue discussion about life-changing moments and perhaps share some life-changing moments of your own. Join the conversation today.